That was my moment when I was able to kind of insert something really personal into the story. And when I was writing it, I gotta say, it brought me to tears. Hi, I'm Alex Anders, and this is the Bisexual Romance Author Vlog. And this week, I'm gonna be doing something that every author wants to do. Like, honestly, it's the thing that maybe one of the reasons why I created this channel. Today, I'm gonna be talking about my latest book, what went into it, how much of it is real life experiences, and just talk about everything about it, including the bisexuality in it and how it all came about. So that's the topic of the video. So get ready. So the book I'm going to be talking about is Her Best Bad Decision. And since few of you probably haven't actually looked at it yet, I'll read a part of the description for the book. I gotta say, I'm kind of self-conscious about the description of this book simply because it's so long. This is like my longest description. And I keep justifying it. Well, let me read it first. Let me read parts of it first, and then I'll talk more about it. Just so you guys know what the story's about. So, Her Best Bad Decision is about a cocky baseball player who falls for the curvy girl who knows how to put him in his place and the off-limits billionaire who owns his team. Laughter follows in this second chance romance where pretend dating leads to secret relationships and a whole lot more. I'm just going to skip past all the other talk about the characters and then go to Her Best Bad Decision is a very steamy, very funny, ultra high heat, standalone bisexual menage romance with explicit MF, MM, MFM, and MM scenes. Contains a not to be missed happily ever after ending. So yeah, so that's roughly the story. And I'll mention the description. There's a bunch I did not read. Like, this is the longest description I've ever written. And the way I kind of justify it is that, like, one thing I learned when I started writing bisexual romance, especially MMF bisexual romance, is that readers like it when you kind of talk about each of the characters. And I've found that if you give if you describe each of the characters, giving the reader kind of like the arc that they go through, kind of a real description, then readers like it more. So with this one, I justified how long it was because like each of the individual like character descriptions, I don't know if you can see that. Maybe you can. Maybe you can't. But each of the character descriptions is the equivalent of one book description. So I talk about Lexi's main female character, and this is kind of her arc. And I talk about Forrest Wolf, who is the baseball player. This is his storyline. And I talk about Bradley Morrow, who I call Lay in the book. And this is his storyline. So the reason why the description is so long is because of that. Because I wanted to give them, I wanted to give the readers like the full breadth of what the character is about. And the result is, since there are 3 characters instead of 2 characters or 1 main character, is that it's so long. I got to think of how I can shorten it for the next book. But for right now, I'm like willing to leave it at that. So yeah, so that's it. And this book, usually it takes me only about 2 to 3 weeks to write a book. But this book actually took me, I'm going to say, since about 10 months. I started it in October of last year after I came back from Japan. So I went to Japan, and this book starts out in Japan. There's a baseball player in Japan, and the couple meet for the first time in Japan. And I was looking at the book to really share all of my experiences, like my major experiences in Japan, just from my understanding of how different the culture is and things like love hotels and how unique the people are. And like I talk about a couple times in this book, how shy the men are there. And it's like a huge thing in Japan, just how less aggressive they are than, let's say, an American culture, European culture, or like, Australian culture or something like that. In terms of approaching women and all these little things that made Japan so wonderful and so unique. I wanted to add all these things into a story. Like I wanted to come up with a story where I could talk about it. And then I thought, oh, well, maybe I can explore sports romance, and baseball is really huge in Japan. That's kind of my way in. And I kind of worked it through there. And on the Japan note, so one of the main things that happens in the Japan story, aspect of the story, is uh, Forrest Wolf, the main male character, he goes to a spa, a men's spa in Japan. A little story on that. So I was going to go to Japan, and whenever I take a vacation, it's always like I book it, and then I work, and then I don't basically think of it, like I pay for it and stuff like that. I don't even think about it until like a couple of days before I have to leave, or like a week before I have to leave. And I did that with this one. Didn't have a lot of time to think what I was going to do, and I realized I had a day off. Like you arrive, I was on like a tour, an adventure tour, and I arrive, and then you had the entire day to do whatever you wanted, and then the tour started the next morning. So I had that extra time there, and I was like, oh, what I should do with this? Like, I have no idea what I should do with this. And I don't know, I guess one night I was feeling kind of, I don't know, amorous. And I started researching stuff and found out there are things called spas. Because I'd gone to a men's spa in Spain, and it was quite the experience. So I thought, okay, well, let me look to see whether there's anything like this in Japan, and there is. And I realized, oh, wow, there's an entire, like, gay district in Japan. I was like, oh, I should check that out because, you know, I do these videos. Maybe it'll be interesting to discover. And I found out about the spas. I started researching, and I found out they are crazy. Like, they are crazy. I'd never, like, all the stuff I was reading, like, I'd never experienced anything like that. Even the spa in Japan, not in the spa I went to in Spain was crazy. It was. But what I read about in Japan wasn't insane. So I had to check it out. And so I decided that my first day there, which happened to be a Saturday, was going to be, or Friday, was going to be me visiting the spa. And I was in Tokyo, and I went to the spa, and the stuff I talk about in the book are things that I witnessed in the spa. You know, that's as much as I'm going to say in a public setting. And it was just kind of insane. And like how I described the spa, like the levels and stuff like that, that's exactly how it is. The spa in Tokyo has a purple fluorescent light, and I described that in the book, and the stairs, and it's the rooms, and there's like a mattress on one side of the room on the ground, and then bunk beds on the other side. And it's, man, it is quite the experience. It is unlike anything I've ever experienced before. And I had to capture it in a bisexual romance, and I did. So when you're reading it, know that is, like, I'm describing a real place and real experiences that I witnessed when I went to the spa. So yeah, there's that. And I talk about love hotels, and yeah, love hotels are these things in Japan where, because, and I mentioned in the book, because people live with their parents longer, because the walls are so thin in traditional Japanese homes, there's no privacy. So if you want to be with someone, you want to be able to like relax and kind of let loose sort of thing, you need to go elsewhere. And the Japanese society figured out, okay, well, let's create these things for locals to go to called love hotels. And they're like themed and kind of wild looking. On the outside, though, it's like very, very, conservative looking on the outside. But once you get inside, there's a vending machine to check in, so you don't have to talk to anybody. So you can just like get a card. Like there's no faces. Like you can, because again, Japanese men tend to be very shy. You don't have to confront anyone when you go into these love hotels. Like there's a blind up in front of the person's face who's like handing you the card, so they don't see you, you don't see them, and you just go into the elevator and you go into your room, and then you do what you do, and then you exit through the back exit. So all these little things I had to get into the book, so that's why like I started the book in Japan to talk about these like unique experiences, and also obviously very much helped me because once I had that as a starting point, I was able to jump off and do like the storyline I was able to do with having their relationship have an issue because it started out in Japan and went somewhere else. And also in terms of location, this is the first time I've done a book where the locations were actually places that I completely researched. There's multiple locations in this book, one being in Japan, it starts on Japan, and then it ends up in Portland, Oregon. And between books, I had written I'd started this book in October, and then I decided to stop after my account got deleted, and I was opening up a new account, and I decided, okay, well, what I need to do to kind of, because I lost all of my back catalog. Like, my books were living on the bestsellers list, bisexual romance bestsellers list, with the best case scenario, and now they're all deleted. I had to re-upload it, so I had to figure out a way to get them back on there. So I thought, okay, well, how do I re-energize my book catalog? And I thought, oh, it's my best-selling book, it's Island Candy. Then I should write a sequel sequel to Island Candy. So I stopped writing Her Best Bad Decision, or what became Her Best Bad Decision. I started writing Island Candy Baby News. And I released it, and then after that, I thought about returning back to Her Best Bad Decision. I didn't. I decided to write Her Red Hood instead. It was not a great decision. Financially, that was not a great decision. Granted, Her Red Hood is my best book structurally. By far, my best book structurally. Like, it starts in one place and it circles around and ends up back in this place there. In terms of storytelling, I'm super proud of it. But it wasn't a great decision because it just wasn't what the market wanted. And instead of then returning back to Her Best Bad Decision, I said, oh, Aladdin's coming out. I should write an Aladdin story. So I had to go through all those stories before I eventually came back. But between finishing Her Red Hood and starting Aladdin's Jasmine, which became Her Two Wishes, I took 2 weeks off. I had said to myself, okay, as a rule, from now on, as soon as I finish a book, I'm taking 2 weeks off. That was the only time I did it. But what I decided to do to justify it was I said, okay, well, my next book, like, I knew Her Best Bad Decision, the second half of the book was going to be in Portland, Oregon. So I was like, I've never been to Portland. Well, actually, I've been in Portland for like a day, but I should go up and like visit Portland to get like research for the book. That could justify it, right? Could write off my taxes, right? So I did that. I drove up to Portland, and I took pictures of things that I saw that I liked. One of the things I saw was the first time I ever saw a sign, like in a window, and there's like a number of shops that have this in the window where it says, we will serve you, you know, we appreciate your business no matter your race, your size, your sexual orientation, your gender expression, stuff like that, which kind of blew my mind. So seeing that kind of inspired me in terms of the details of the book. When I saw that on the street I was on, I decided, well, okay, well, the Forrest Wolf character is bisexual. He's going to become comfortable with Portland because of that sign, or seeing that. He's going to decide to live in the exact neighborhood I'm standing in, and I chose a specific building, because of that sign. And that's how he doesn't feel comfortable with it. And just kind of getting the vibe of Portland allowed me to like kind of flush out the book in a way that I'm hoping makes it feel more rich, and like you're actually there as you're reading the story. So, you know, this is the first book where I've multiple locations, and also where I've visited multiple locations, and so much of the actual experiences visiting there are in it. And I got to say, when I was writing this book, I talked to, one of my friends who I talk to when I'm writing books. I mentioned a couple of times to her how different this one felt than my other books. I guess that, I have a particular structure that I like, and I know that you all like that too. And I follow it. And this one felt very different. I don't know how different it ended up being. And certainly, like, the humor is the same. But I guess the Forrest Wolf character, the bisexual character, he has a different outlook towards his bisexuality than my other characters do. And certainly, they all kind of have an insecurity about their bisexuality to begin with. That's the traditional thing I do, because I can relate to it. Like, when I was first coming out as bisexual, I felt very self-conscious about it, so that's what I always put into all of my characters. But there was something about him. First of all, I mentioned the word bisexual in this story. I generally don't do it, simply because I did another video about this on the main channel, where I talk about, if you say the word bisexual, then you're talking about it as a concept, as opposed to just a person being bisexual. So saying the word bisexual means that you are discussing bisexuality with one of the other characters, like one of the characters, or you as an author discussing it in the book. So I never used the word bisexual, but in this story I did, and I did it consciously. Partially because I feel like society's changing. Like I felt before I shouldn't, because my readers, although they like bisexual romance and the word bisexual is on the title, I didn't think that that's why they were getting bisexual romances. And I'm still sure that's not why they're getting it. But I thought it would also take away from the story by discussing bisexuality as a concept. In this story, I consciously decided that I would. And in this story, first time ever, they're more than just the main characters who are bisexual. In this story, I choose to make one of the parents, the father of the main female character, Lexi, make him bisexual, and use the experiences of her father and her mother, because her mother knows he's bisexual, and her and Lexi, the main character, realizing that Forrest Wolf might be bisexual, and have her parents' experiences feed her relationship with both Forrest and with Lee, and also have her experience with Forrest and Lee feed her relationship with her parents. And I gotta say a couple things about the parents. There's one scene where the father talks about a guy he was in love with. So from a personal standpoint, I mentioned before there was a guy I was in love with when I wrote Aladdin's Jasmine, which became her Two Wishes. And I still wasn't completely over everything when I was writing this book. And I actually made the story that her father is telling about the guy he was in love with, that really reflects a lot sort of the relationship I had with a dude that I was, involved with. Like the tragedy of it, the way I'm one of the characters in the story, and the guy I'm talking about was the other character in the story. And that was my moment when I was able to kind of insert something really personal into the story. And when I was writing it, I gotta say, it brought me to tears. Like, there's something that happens in that story, and it brought me to tears when I wrote it, because in part it reminded me of the disappointment, the tragedy of the ending of a relationship, sort of thing. And yeah, that's kind of like an inside story there and how that came about. And I can tell from the reviews that readers are getting it. They're getting the emotional aspect from that particular part of the story. And that's, part of the tragedy is because, a large part of that story is real, and I could give it the details that I did in while writing it because I lived it, So, and not all of it, but enough of it that, yeah, you get it. So yeah, that's one thing I wanted to say about the story. And also something different about this story than any other story I've written is that when I was writing this story, I actually teared up multiple times. Like, there's 3 points in this story where either when I was writing it I teared up, or when I was editing that I teared up. And one of them is, the story that the father tells. Another one is, it's mentioned in a review, but I don't want to give it away too much. Let's just say that there's 2 baseball aspects to the story which are very touching. Which is why I love sports romance, sports stories. Like, I get now that sports romance is more about, a taming the beast sort of thing, like this kind of asshole guy who is kind of a jock and meets a woman and she tames him. I get that now, but what I really love about sports movies is the victory and the defeat and all the drama that comes from the actual sport itself. Because, the reason why people love sports is because of the winning and the losing, the heartbreak and the elation and all that stuff. So I wanted to use that, I put that in the story, and there are two parts where when I was writing it or editing it, I teared up. And it's because of that drama and elation and stuff like that. So yeah, it was different. This story was different than my other stories because I was able to insert like little secrets about things I experienced into it, and B, because this is the first time I was writing a story and I actually cried. I literally cried when I was working on it. The other stories, even though I know that other stories have made readers cry, they've never touched me in the same way. Like for me, it's usually I'm writing the story in my head, but this one really, it really just got me. Like at one point, I had to stop and I was kind of like crying the ugly cry. It's never happened before. So I think too that is why people have responded so well to the story. Like I can tell you the reviews I'm getting are unlike the reviews I've ever gotten before. Like I'm getting things like absolutely amazing, like as a header, so very good, or let's say OMG exclamation point. And people talking about like using the word like fantastic and all that stuff. I think it's because in this story more than any other, I do all the feels. I touch all the feels. More laughter in this one probably than a lot of them. More tears than probably any of them. More like kind of just pensive thought, because things happen, especially when the father's talking about his old relationship. Like just like things that make you go, sort of thing. So I think there are more feels in this story than any of my other stories. And I think maybe that's what I was thinking about when I was talking to my friend saying this is unlike anything I've ever written. I thought it was because of the structure, and it is certainly structured a little differently, just in terms of where certain things happen in the story. But I think it's more that it was more emotional. It was drawing more on personal experiences than any of my other stories, even more than Her Two Wishes. And I drew a lot onto Her Two Wishes. I think it was more like I did more debating with myself and understanding myself as a bisexual in Her Two Wishes. But in Her Best Bad Decision, it was just kind of like, here are things that I've experienced, and here's how it made me feel, and then communicating that through the written word. So yeah, that's the story. I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of everything about it, the humor, about the emotionality of it. I'm really so proud of the reviews it's getting so far. And it was my second best-selling romance outside of Amazon. It's only been released for like a week and a half now. So on Amazon, which is of course the key thing. So it went up very high, like 18,000, which is good, in the first couple of days as I was telling my readers it exists, and then always afterwards it dips back down, but it hasn't fallen too far. So hopefully it'll now go through the process of slowly climbing back up, not just based on my newsletter readers, but more based on like the readers that just exist on Amazon. And that's really how it gains its stability. Every book gains its stability by finding its audience on the platform it's on. So hopefully it'll start the process of finding its audience, and it'll like slowly build and grow. And I know it's in this book. Like if the cover is good enough to attract the readers, and the description is enough to make it my second best-selling bisexual romance outside of Amazon, then I have high hopes for this, because I think that if it's enough to draw people to get the book, then they're going to really enjoy it once they start reading it. Like as one person described it, from page one. And on Monday, I will start recording the audiobook for it. And I got to say, I'm a little nervous of this one. this is going to require more performance than any of my other, 49 books that I've recorded so far. I've done a lot of audiobooks, but this one's going to require a certain level of something. Like I spent all day on Thursday trying to come up with the different voices, to lock in the voices of the characters. And this is going to be something I have to deal with a lot moving forward because I want to do audiobooks for every book I do moving forward. But it means that I'm going to have to do one main female voice and two male voices. So I'm going to have to come up with two voices that are very distinct from each other. And I'm going to have to give a performance in that. And the one thing, I remember when I first started acting, when I first moved to Los Angeles, I joined a theater company. And we used to do like Sunday like training sort of thing, rehearsal practice thing. And we used to have monologues and we'd have to put them up in workshop, that's what it's called. And the director of the company wanted to do a particular play. And since I was the only black guy at the theater company, and I looked the way I looked, she was like, oh, this is the part. This part would be great for you. So work on this part. Maybe we can put this play up. And I worked on it. And it was like I did my best. But every week she would come and say, you're not letting go. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. She's French. And I would come back. And then at one point, like everyone's like it's a group of I think it was about 40 people at the time. So 40 people would be sitting in the audience, and I'd be on stage, and she would be, no, Alex, you're not doing this right. You're not doing this right. And I'm like, the problem is. She's like, what? I'm like, the problem is that I have to do it like with an African character. So I had to figure out an African accent and then perform in the African accent. And it was the first time I'd ever had done such an accent that I'm so unfamiliar with, and then have to perform in it. I said to her, it's the problem is I have to act in the accent. And one of the other actors watching said, well, why don't you just do like once without the accent? I'm like, can I? And she was like, yes, go ahead, do it without the accent. So I did it. And when I did it, like it was night and day between the performances. Like the people in the audiences were laughing hard and like waiting on every word I said. And like it was just like a completely different thing. And afterwards, like they clapped and I'm like, oh, okay. Like I didn't realize just how different it was me acting with an accent and without an accent. But apparently it was night and day. So much so that one of the guys afterwards, as we were walking to a car, I said, I just want to let you know. That was amazing. And I'm like, what? I don't understand how it could be so different. Like I thought, just a good performer is a good performer. But apparently, ever since then, I now have a kind of an issue with doing accents, like performing in an accent. And I've had years of experience since then. But doing an accent or doing like an affectation on my voice and still performing comedy and still like doing all the range of emotions that I could while not doing it is kind of a challenge for me. So now moving forward, I'm gonna have to do two male characters, perform in them, and have to make them so distinct for long periods of time and be able to like perform in it. Man, that's a little nerve-wracking for me. So on Thursday, I spent Thursday morning just working on the different voices. And I'm gonna be doing like a southern voice for the baseball character. And granted, I say that his parents in the story are from Florida. And I'm going to do more of I don't know, it's probably going to be more like a Texas accent. Like a cool Texas accent, simply because it's the most southern accent I can do and still perform in. I shouldn't be telling these secrets. But that's what I'm going to be doing. But it will allow me to like perform in it. But I'm going to have to figure out something moving forward because like if I do every book moving forward in an audiobook, and if I do the performance of it, that means that, let's say I do like 2 more books by the end of the year. That's 6 total male character voices that I'm gonna have to come up with, including the one I'm doing tomorrow, starting tomorrow, plus the 2 others. And they all have to be distinct and not sound like each other. Okay, well, maybe it's a good thing because now like it's like it gets my mind somewhere else, so I'm not just about writing now. I have to worry about acting performances as well. But yeah, that's my dilemma right now. Hopefully it goes well. I think I feel comfortable with these voices. Now all the side characters is going to be kind of an issue as well because first of all, there are two characters who are going to be speaking in Japanese. They're not going to say Japanese words, but, you know, of course, they're speaking in Japanese, but I'm writing it in English. But I probably should indicate in some way that they're Japanese, and Japanese accent is not something I can do at all. Like, I was practicing it on Thursday, and no, it's not good. It's a not good accent. So I'm going to have to figure out some way around that. And then Lexi's last name is Rubin, and it's kind of a, I guess I had a best friend whose last name was Rubenstein, so like I think of it as being a Jewish name, I guess, even though it doesn't have to be. And when I was writing it, I could hear Lexi's mother, like talking my mind in like a Jewish sort of, like Jewish mother sort of tone. And I have to figure out whether or not I'm actually going to do any sort of Jewish accent with it, with those characters. I don't know. I don't know. I know how other audiobook narrators handle it. They just do the accent. But I do have some sort of hesitation in this culture of doing, as a person who, like many people know, is a black dude, to do accents that are, you know, culturally different. So I'm kind of playing with that as well, especially if it's not a good performance of the accent. But these are the challenges I'm thinking. It's the author / audiobook narrator sort of problems that you have. But I'm gonna like enjoy the process. I'm gonna like think of this as, when I was doing Her Two Wishes, I was thinking of it as just narrating the audiobook. But actually I'm gonna think about this one as more as like a performance piece, because there was more narration, like the narrator, sort of like the narrator's voice for Her Two Wishes. It was kind of told in the third person. That's a better way of saying it. Whereas this one is told in first person. So because it's all told, like each chapter is told from a character's perspective, so I have to do all the thinking that they're doing in their voice. So not only, get this, so not only do I, like usually when a person reads an audiobook, they have the voice of the narrator, and then they have the voice of the character, and then they have like the other voices. But what I'm going to do this time is I have to do 3 characters, the character's narrator voice, and then the character's talking to another individual voice. And then also I'll have to do variations of that. But those are challenges. But I hope you check out the book, and I hope and tell me what you think about the book when you actually get it. I'm running out of battery. So I'm going to say, until next time, stay cooler, my bisexual and reader friends. Stay cooler. And check out the book. Bye.